I think let's get going. So just as a way of introduction, my name is Terentia Brown. I am an engineer by profession and have just pivoted into career coaching and a leadership coach and trainer. And I've been working with a lot of people that have been asking, how do I navigate my career? And so this webinar was born from that. So a lot of people have been asking this question, not just because of the crisis, but just in general, I think. So we decided to run this webinar to really answer some of the questions, and where do you start, and what steps do you take, and what should you be doing and looking out for. So yeah, that's me. Nathaniel, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I've been working in recruitment for 7 years, and actually I started my profession as a supply chain engineer as well, having worked for Target and as an FMCG company and in distribution and logistics and supply chain. And my career pivoted a couple of times, so I'll probably have a couple of stories to share where I moved from doing actually what I went to university for to stepping into recruitment, and then spending 7 years building up a recruitment business in London. And then last year started my own company, Impel Talent, which also is focused on career coaching and recruitment and all sorts. But this topic is a really interesting one because I actually work with candidates, whether that be engineers through to executive level. And I think there is always a little bit of confusion as to, okay, like, what do I do? I'm ready to make a change, or I need to make a change. What do I need to tick off next? And I think it's going to be incredible for us today to review a little bit of some of the steps you can take, some of the stuff I've seen people successfully do throughout their career. And hopefully, whether you're looking for a job now or whether or not you want to keep your doors open, like, this topic is extremely important. And hopefully, from feedback I've received from people, we'll share that today, and it'll help you in your own job search.
Perfect. So to kick it off, I think let's start at the beginning. That would be good. And the beginning is where do you start? Like, if you are trying to navigate your career or change your career or just looking for another opportunity, like, where do you start? What would be the first thing you think about?
I think, one of the most important things when you look at yourself and your own career is actually understanding what you want. Yeah. So I think it's where I see the biggest issue with anybody who's looking for a job is in today's market, it's very knee-jerky. So we have such technology now. There's LinkedIn Premium. You can speak to recruiters. You can FaceTime with 5 or 6 different recruiters if you want to. But that also means that a lot of people make career decisions based off of emotion. You have a bad day at work. You're upset with your boss. And the trouble with that, while it can affect your overall career, is that you decide to make decisions without maybe thinking of the long-term impact or thinking of a plan. So I think one of the key things that anyone can do, obviously we've talked about this plenty, Terentia, is actually sit down and see where you're at. What skills have you built? What is your profile? Sitting down and looking at what you actually like to do, what your passion is, and I'm sure you'll dive into that a bit more. But even more so, what do you want? And we'll talk about how this leads to your goals. But you need to kind of have a good basis of what you're looking for. And professionals that have a good idea of what they want to go to next, or they've got a plan in place for where they want to go to, you tend to see this very straight linear progression for their own career. Whereas other times I'll work with people that, they're very unsure of what they want next, but they know they want a different change. So I think the first thing is to look a lot more at reflection and obviously identify what is actually wrong and do that root cause analysis. Which I think you do probably a lot with your own clients anyway, but
I've seen
how would you start, I guess?
I think, just with the clients, and that was one of the questions Johan had asked about, what are our clients struggling with right now when we talk about career. And one of it is understanding what is that next move. And I always say, I have a program called Genesis, because I say, let's go back to the beginning. To understand who you are first, and like what you are saying, like, what is your purpose? What is your why? What are you good at? What are your strengths? Are you able to articulate your strengths and be able to understand what are your values? Because if you are applying for jobs to a company that does not align with your values, it's going to be an unhappy time, when you go to work every day. So it's important to understand culture. What is your culture that that you are able to align with that new company's culture. Just as much as when you're going for an interview, they are interviewing you, but you also get to interview that leader, you get to interview that company. But the only way that you're able to ask them questions is if you know what you want and what you're looking for. So I think, that preparation needs to happen. And, from some of my clients, when I ask them these questions, it's very difficult to just, sit on the couch and then look out into the sky and just dream of all these things. So it's important to have a structured approach to answering these questions. Really where you have accountability, where you are writing in a journal, or you are speaking to a coach or a mentor, someone, maybe it could be your line manager, but really articulating it, bringing it to life. Who are you? What have you learned from your past experiences? Why are you wanting to change career from where you are? Are you unhappy where you are? And what's your contribution to creating that unhappiness in that environment? So I think the first step is very reflective, self-reflective. And having that self-awareness is critical to understanding if making that next move makes sense for you. So yeah, I think it's
massive. And I think if you look at, because either you're going to stay in your current company, perhaps you are in the right role. This reflection doesn't always mean that you need to be looking outside or looking at what you want. But it could very much be introspectively, okay, I've been in this job for a year or 2 years. I now want to become a manager in my department, or I want to be a director, or I want, and I think people don't many times know like what they want. I've managed very young teams, I think entry-level grads and stuff. And it can be very frustrating for people who don't, are still unsure, but then that there is still something to be done there. It's, I think people who think that they don't know what they want kind of just sit and they hope it's just going to come and bash them over the head one day. Whereas I think it means that you've got to actually do a lot of like self-finding and going out and find, because then once you can identify what you like or what you're passionate about, what your values are, or if the role you're in is now is good, then you can decide, okay, do I need to go up in my current ladder, or do I need to start making a plan for something else?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, in terms of understanding what is the next steps, what are the goals, what are you going to set? How do you set that? How do you know where to start? Like once you know, okay, yes, I know who I am. I know these are my strengths. This is what I do well. This is what I would love to do going forward. How do you go from here, this point, to that first step, that next point?
I think if you can't figure out what you want, then it's hard for you to then have those conversations internally. So how can you sit with a boss? We've talked, again, I think we've had conversation on this, but it should be a very even relationship between you and a company, where you are able to give something which ends up being a lot of your time, maybe youth, maybe, which is invaluable, and you want to be able to receive something back from that business. And I think if it can be fine to be figuring that out, especially if say you're at the early point in your career, or even later stages in your career, and you're starting to mix in a new company and you want to understand the structures in the business first. But that doesn't mean your goal can't be trying to find what you like within this company. And then you can actually do things outside of work or extra research or whatever to find what you're passionate about what you're interested in. And then being able to set those goals means, okay, well, actually, now I've kind of realized I want to be this. I'd say a really good example of this is there was a director I've worked with, and this will probably come into the communication piece as well, but he was a guy who was a director of operations and wanted to be a site head, wants to manage a site and oversee a site. And he's been clear about those expectations internally, externally, so he can evaluate both job markets at the same time. But if he wasn't clear and precise about his expectations, then how are you able to push for that internally? And once you then know what you want, you can do the external training. You can communicate with people internally and build relationships. There's a lot. So, I don't know if there's a pinpoint of being able to identify exactly what that goal it should be for a person, because I think everyone's going to be different and have their own, constraints. But I think the important part is if you know who you are and what you want, then you can set achievable goals to get there, whether that be something short-term, whether it be, we talked about, taking little steps and moving slowly towards a goal. And, a goal doesn't always have to be a positive one. I loved, my mom's given me a piece of advice early in my career where I hated my career. Yeah, I hated it. And even though it was a great career option and choice, I needed to find a way to leave. And I didn't need to just quit. That wasn't the point, but it was going, okay, well, I need to, all right, start putting extra time into my development. I need to start looking into outside career paths. I need to perhaps learn new skills so that by the time it came to actually leaving that business or deciding to go elsewhere, I had built up the career capital to make that move or change that position. And do you find that similarly? I mean, it must be, as a career coach, if you're sitting with somebody who is struggling to find out what they want or what their goal is, how would you start? How do you start with the people you work with, I guess?
Yeah, I think it starts with having a plan. So really, if you know where is it that you want to go, and I think that's the hardest part, is to just get off the starting block. And it's hard to see, 3, 5, 10 years ahead. Some people, they figure it out. They have that. It's very clear. I want to study medicine, and I want to, go into surgery, and I want to be the best surgeon or ENT or be a specialist. Or people have that drive, but most of us actually, if we really honest, we get bored. And so I know for me personally, I love to do different things. So at least every 2 years, I was changing jobs just because I wanted to be challenged differently. So, but I needed to know, how do I make those intentional steps so that it is eventually getting to a goal. And for me, my goal was to see how I love leadership. I love learning about leadership. I love reading about it. My spare time, I read about leadership. And so I knew I loved that. And I was practicing these principles with my team. And so in my spare time, even I found myself like figuring out ways how to do team building, how to do, relationship building. So I found something that I loved. And I think this is what, when people say, not to work a day in your life, if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. If you're doing something that you're passionate about, that gets you up in the morning, then you will never feel like it's work, because it shouldn't. And I think, especially like setting goals, people see it as like this, Mount Everest. So you see, 10 years ahead as a huge mountain. But climbing that mountain, people that have scaled that mountains before, it started with the first step. So sometimes it's all about that first step. So you take that first step, and then you stop and you reflect. Okay, where's the step taking me? Do I go down this path or this path? So you always have choice. I think, when we allow this wave to wash us, in terms of like just carry us in our career, and allow the outside forces to move us to where they think we should be, I think that's where a lot of the unhappiness comes from. So I think it's that goal is, what is the first thing? What's going to make me excited? Maybe it's learning something new that's going to get you excited. So learning a different skill that's going to open up another world for you, rather than just going to HR and saying, what courses do you have available? And just go, okay, yeah, pick that one. So I think it's more about you taking ownership of your career and saying, what is it that I love to do? And I'm very much aware that, people say, yeah, but I need to put food on the table. I need to have a job so I can get money at the end of the month. Again, I come back to, you have a choice. And like you said, we are not saying, leave your job tomorrow and then try and figure it out. Have that exit strategy. Plan ahead and say, okay, I give myself 6 months. I mean, even for myself now, pivoting out of engineering and saying that and starting a business, I said, in 12 months, I'm going to evaluate, have I grown? How have I grown? And how much more time am I willing to invest in this company, and be able to say, yes, I'm committed to this. And every day I take small steps towards growing this company. So I think it's just about that everyday small steps, incremental steps that will compound over time. Yeah.
And the people I honestly see when it's the senior execs that have gotten to very high levels, whether it be VP, I don't want to say I don't see things that are vastly different to people that are younger in their career, but I do see differences in behavior. I see those people are very, very proactive in their external networks, their internal networks, and they have goals and missions in mind of what they want to get to.
Yeah.
You know, one of the hardest, I think sometimes people feel a bit uncomfortable about how they communicate those goals. Like I'd say, you know, if you manage sometimes a young team, I always used to love people that people would say they're quote unquote ambitious, and I wouldn't say that. It's just people are very sometimes clear in what they want to do or what they want to become a consultant. They want to, you know, they want to move up the rank. And as a manager, it makes, and you probably can relate to this massively. It makes it so much easier to make sure that I can keep that person engaged with the company.
Yes.
You know, if people are requesting training and they're actually, I don't mind someone, I never minded someone being actually very pushy about what they wanted, because I could then make sure that they were getting what they were comfortable with. And I actually think sometimes a lot of this is a perception thing. It's like, I don't want to tell people that I want to be a manager. I don't want to tell people I want to be a specialist or I want to move to this department. And as a result, people, if your company doesn't know, then it's a surprise to them when you leave and take on a different role in a different department elsewhere. But actually, you probably could have been a little bit more effective about communicating that with your internal company. And reversely, and this kind of segs us well nicely into communication, but reversely, you can also be pretty open about where you want your career to go with people outside of the company. And you might actually be able to leverage some of that information with your current company. So I think there's a different level, almost like I'd be on the phone with someone who's a quality engineer or procurement person who might not want to hear about any outside opportunities and not be interested until they're ready to find a new job. And I would argue it's too late, because if you're ready to find a new job, you're not proactively making sure you're taking a role that's the right move for your career. You're then making a decision a bit too late in the process, where you could have built a network, you could have met with people, and you could have been aware of new opportunities. And that's from an external point of view. I see senior execs always take my calls, right? They always want to know what's out there, and they build relationships. And I know they do the same thing internally as well. You know, they may not know there's something coming up, but they can build those relationships. So how important do you think, I mean, having managed people yourself, big teams within engineering, how can the people effectively communicate what they want? You know, let's start internally, and then I can maybe address externally.
Before we continue, give us a thumbs up in the chat if this is making sense. If it's not, please drop us a question on the Q&A. You know, we can clarify points if it's not clear. So please interact. We want to feel like you're part of it. You're not flies on the wall. You're part of this. Okay. Sorry to interrupt, Nathaniel, but I just
no messages saying, oh, none of this makes sense.
Okay, that's good. Great. So yeah, in terms of the team, I think I will share what was my approach as a leader for the team. What was my approach? The approach really was having that one-to-one communication, that building a relationship, building trust. I think trust is a foundation of every relationship. If you are able to build trust with your leader, I think it becomes so much more easier for you to have these open discussions. I can tell you, before I moved to Johnson & Johnson, and you would know this because you were the recruitment specialist that managed to get me from Unilever to J&J. And I was not looking for a job. I was quite happy building an ice cream factory. I was very happy. And basically, you connected with me. And the first thing I did is I went to my boss at that time, and I told him about it. I said, you know what, somebody's contacted me. And, you know, the best advice that he had given me, and this is what he said, the best advice I got from a previous leader was go and explore, benchmark yourself, see what you're worth, you know, go for the interview. Obviously, he didn't expect me to take the job, but he gave me that advice because he felt, you know what, this is the best advice for me. he was not selfish in that moment. He did not say, no, you can't, or no, it's not going to be worth your while. He said, take the day off, go for the interview. And I did. I was able to prepare. I went for it. Long story short, I eventually ended up taking the job. So because that opened up a whole nother world for me. But it was because I had that relationship. I think it's so important to have open communication and build trust, and build a relationship. And then having those one-to-one conversations becomes so much easier. And I know, in companies, training budgets are always an issue. When we need to cut costs, that's the first thing to go. But it doesn't always take a classroom learning experience to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that again, because I think this is something that we all think about training as, I need to go for a classroom experience. I need to sign up for a course, and then I get that experience. There's so much value in the on-the-job learning. So, for instance, I used to do this with my team. We did the 70-20-10 rule. And so 70% so all development, when we did their development plan, 70% is actually on the job work. So where it's experience that you get from working on a particular project or working with another team, cross-functional experience, you actually learn more and you take away more when you do on the job. 20% is leveraging relationships. So getting a mentor, maybe a skip level mentor, approaching people to mentor you, maybe even junior people to mentor you, because you get a different perspective. So getting different perspectives gives you, also brings growth. And 10% is reserved for classroom training.
Yeah.
So if you look at, 70-20-10, 70 on the job, 20 is leveraging relationships, and 10% of training, then, learning and development, we cannot use finances as the obstacle or, the reason why we are not learning and we are not growing. That makes sense?
Yeah, I really liked actually how you called it effective communication. So if you don't have that trust there, you can't be effective with your communication as to what you want. And if you can't be effective on your communication of what you want internally, because what the nice thing is, if you do those things right, if you do build relationships and you do try and drive your own development internally, which is aligned with goals that you might have classified, etc. If then you don't get what you've been asking for internally, it's not a surprise when you leave. And I want to say that because I think people always feel very guilty about taking a new job. And I've seen some people get treated really poorly by companies who, in the leaving process. And I think a lot of it does come down to the fact that, well, actually, if you had said from day one, maybe with your new expectation in your new role, that you want this, and this is what you want to get there, and you do the trainings and X, Y, and you proactively take control of your career, and then you don't get that promotion or you get overlooked for or whatnot, when you leave or if you go to a new company, it's not a surprise. And if they haven't really, and almost, you should almost hope, not to say this on negative, you'd almost hope that HR should be thinking this is a risk for us because we're not giving this person opportunity. We've invested, if you're doing a lot of trainings internally, they've invested a lot in you. And then when you're interviewing and identifying new opportunities, it's not a shock. And on the reverse side of that, I'd say that you can build relationships externally as well. So whether it be with mentors, career coaches, but also recruiters. I use this analogy for how people can handle their careers. It's like a poker game. Right? You sit down and you can decide your chips is your time, like how much time you might commit to any process. And the difference is there are people that sit at the table and take those first set of cards every time, and they see what they've got. Texas Hold'em, let's say. And they'll say they decide to fold or they decide to continue in the process. But the difference is that they're sat at the table. So they're evaluating new opportunities constantly. And whether or not, and it doesn't take you that long to have a look and see if you've got a pair of nines or aces or whatever, and then decide to put more money in the pot, more of your time into the process. And then it could turn into something fruitful. And reversely, it's the element of being able to meet new people, being able to meet new managers, new businesses. And that's that proactivity. So I think we'll come back to it a few times now, whether you're being
Mm.
proactive, it can be both circles internally within your company to get to where you want to get to by identifying what you want. And either you can do that yourself, where I suggest that people should 100% look at
Mm.
external help and sit down with someone who can help them find those goals. But then
Yeah.
you can start to explore different avenues of how you reach that goal. And that
Mm.
means building relationships internally, but also finding people in your field, finding a recruitment specialist or a person that you know can bring you valuable opportunities and that you can also build a relationship with throughout your career.
Yeah. So I just want to read some comments just in the chat, just to break it
Yeah,
up a little bit. So people are they finding it very informative, which is great. And speaking about, you know, the importance of building relationships, communication is definitely top of mind. And I think in terms of like learning what we spoke about, learning to find different ways and creative ways that does not need money all the time. So I think that's good. I think, you know, people are seeing that the opportunity is there to step out, and the ball is in our court. So, you know, we have control over the relationships that we build and form, and take that first step. You know, emotional intelligence is not always very high. You know, we can say our leader is not doing this, his manager is not doing this, but it's not always, you know, in their hands. You know, take that initiative. Even if you are not in that position, part of the team, take the initiative, reach out to your leader. There's also Deshni was speaking about networking with relevant groups and industry leaders can also add value.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I
So
think
I
it's
think, yeah,
people can certainly today, you can join LinkedIn groups. You
yeah,
can easily look up conferences and things that you want to invest in and go
yeah,
and visit and meet people.
yeah,
I think there's more. I mean, look, there are jobs that are always advertising you can apply for online, but nothing
yeah,
beats that genuine connection that you can build with someone
yes,
through meeting them at a conference or in a group or having a different conversational topic. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of fear around the word networking.
Yeah.
I think we stand in our own way, actually. I think we are afraid sometimes. I know for myself for a long time, I'm an introvert by nature. So it's very daunting to just, you know, step into a room and just go up to a stranger and introduce yourself and say, this is who I am, this is what I do. But somebody gave me such good advice a few years ago about networking. You know, the people that you network with, they just people. You know,
Yeah.
so it's, don't think of it as, oh, this person's going to give me a job, I need to be on my, you know, on my best, I need to say the most perfect words. Go up to someone and ask them a question about themselves. Ask them, you know, and use it as a mentoring opportunity to say, you know, learn something about their career, what do they do right now, and rather ask from that perspective than feeling intimidated by the fact that you going up to someone because they potentially could give you a job. I think we should, you know, remove that from our minds, and really look at it as an opportunity to just ask another human being, hey, what's your story? I would really love to hear your story. How did you get to this point in your career? What was some of the milestones that has shaped you? So really having some of those questions in your back pocket that you're able to then just, you know, ask people. And even if you write down, you know, 3 questions and you ask the same 3 to like 10 people, they're never going to know, because you just, you know, if you're having one-on-one conversations, but at least you are prepared, so you feel confident with that question that you go and ask. Yeah.
Terentia, was that a big part of, because you obviously, before you decided to start your own business and leave Johnson and Johnson, you did a lot of networking, you did a lot of external
Mm-hmm.
trainings, you kind of came into around career coaching, etc. Do you think
Yeah.
that's what kind of gave you the confidence in the end to make that step? Like, why you obviously completely pivoted from
Yeah.
engineering into
Yeah.
and while there's obviously correlations between, you know,
Yeah.
leadership, etc., but do you think that those gave you the avenue to do that?
Massively, 100%, without a shadow of a doubt. I think for me, it gave me the confidence to step out and into a world that I always saw as being an extrovert world, where networking was reserved for the people that, you know, could speak a lot and could, just hold the conversations with random strangers. And once I got over that hurdle, I realized it's not about that. It's about the message you have to share. It's the message that, you know, people need to hear the message. And again, it's, we're all human. We all have a story. All our stories are very different. They link in some way. At some point, they may converge at some point, but we are unique. And I think it's, if you have that confidence in just yourself and not compare yourself, I think at this moment in time, there are thousands of coaches. And you would think, you know, why would you go step into a space where there's so many people doing this already? And I really had to find out what was my story. And my story is that I'm an introvert leader, and I'm owning that. And I have a journey and a story to share with people that story resonates with. I want to help people that, you know, are saying, I'm an introvert, I can't be a leader. I don't know how would I lead people when I'm not able to speak. And I want to be able to take people on a journey and support them. And it is possible, but it starts with yourself first. There's a lot of internal work that needs to happen, because there's a lot of limiting beliefs that hold us back. Yeah.
We're a species of stories. You know, I think
Yes.
everyone wants to know where you've come from and where you're going, and what do you want, and where, you know. And I think that's such a good point to make, that actually you kind of found a bit of yourself. And then when it's not so much of selling to anyone as it is just telling who you are and why you do what you do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. In terms of building relationships, like, how do you approach someone? So you said you work with people at all levels. So if you need to reach out, what would be, how would you do that from your perspective?
The key thing is, I think, understanding who are some really great professionals. I mean, it depends on what your market is. You know, if you're a biopharmaceutical scientist and you focus in cell and gene therapy, which is one of the markets I focus on, it's a small market. So it's actually a lot easier for you to map out, who should I network with and meet with, and who are experts in my field, and should I go out and be proactive in doing that. If it's much bigger than that, if you're in a much larger industry, then, you know, I don't know if there's a surefire way of saying definitely, you know, go after these people. The difference is just taking that awkward step to message someone or connect with someone. You know, if there's, I think it means a lot more when people actually see a business that they want to work for. So say there's something very fascinating that they're working on or they're doing, or innovation or whatever, and then they can message someone around that topic, opens a lot of doors. So from a direct, you know, reaching out to people directly and growing out your own network, 9 times out of 10 would recommend that you do it, right? Connect with people, email someone, you know, ask for someone to be your mentor, ask to learn more information about them and their business, because it can actually come across as very passive, but you might open up some really cool opportunities in the meantime. I do that with my own career. So I think everyone thinks I've stepped out and I own my own business. I still field calls from people called rec to recs, which, if you haven't heard of that term before, I didn't know it existed. It's recruiters for recruiters, which blows my mind, because you think that recruitment people would know how to recruit people. But I stay in contact with these guys constantly. I have field phone calls for them, because I don't know, you know, there might be an incredible managing director role in the US that I like, or somewhere else in the world, that might change my perspective. Or maybe what I've been working on over the last year doesn't fit in line with what I want anymore. But I can kind of make reactions, and I still interact with people at a very senior level from my old businesses. So I keep especially if you've left on good terms, I guess. But you stay in contact with all your old colleagues. You know, foster that relationship, give people that, you know, that attention and that, you know, that. And because it works both ways. There's sometimes they're referring people to you, you're referring people to them, you're building that. So I just don't think your relationships ever end. I think sometimes people leave businesses and they think, oh, that's it, and then they keep going. But if you proactively want to stay in contact with those people, you might find that you have opportunities come back up at your old business, or you know, with new companies. So I think, again, I keep sounding the horn of proactivity, but be very key within your market. Know what your market is. Know who the
Mm-hmm.
professionals are that you want to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And then, continue to be in forums, continue to be in groups, conferences, meet with people, stay in contact with your old colleagues.
Yeah.
But also, what I think people don't do enough of is building enough new relationships internally. So you can sometimes get boxed in. Let's say you do quality assurance. Let's say in a manufacturing facility, you might
Yeah.
work within quality or engineering and sometimes you can get quite typecasted. Stay in the same area. You
Yes.
don't make an effort to meet other departments or, build relationships with other people. And those
Yeah.
can be invaluable. Whether it
Yeah.
is that you learn a bit more about those departments, which is always a great way to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you
Exactly.
just say to your boss's colleague or whatnot that you'd like to learn more about what they do, or like put a quick 30-minute, 45-minute catch up in their calendar and just start building that, because there might be an opportunity that comes up internally. I go, we've actually been looking for a quality engineer. We've talked about how passionate and interested you are in this area. Would you consider it? But had you not spent that 45 minutes, which is nothing in the scale of your career, why wouldn't you just do that?
I have an amazing story to share on that. But now it's 3 years ago. So a lady came to my door while I was in the office. She just knocked on the door and she's like, "This is who I am. I'm currently working in quality, but I would really love to work on projects in the engineering team. I have a chemical engineering background, but I'm in quality at the moment." So I'm like, "Okay, let's have a chat." We chatted, and within a week, we managed to get her onto a assignment, so a rotation out of quality into the project. The project got to pay for her. She was happy. She was growing. She's still in the team even when I left. And so the one-on-ones that we've had subsequent to that, she was like, I feel like this is what I'm meant to do. And at that moment in time, she didn't know anything about commissioning a plant. Like we were doing, we were installing quite a big new technology. She didn't know anything about it, but she had the willingness, the enthusiasm to learn. She had the background in terms of the engineering, so she would be able to learn it. So for me, one of the things that as a hiring manager I look for is attitude. So I would hire for attitude over skills, because skills we can teach. So attitude it's priceless. So I think, on that perspective of how, again, your emotional intelligence comes in, and you come in and you be able to say, this is who I am. I know who I am. I know my strengths. I work well in a team, and you want to learn. You have that enthusiasm to learn. Everything else you can learn. So I, as a hiring manager, I always hire for attitude over skill, actually.
And again, that comes from that person being very proactive. So being like someone that does put something in your calendar or wants to learn a bit more, or I think it sounds really corny, but if you don't take any shots of meeting with people, and it's one of those things where you need to put stuff out there without receiving anything back.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of expectation sometimes, like, oh, I've done this catch up, now I need to have this, or you know what, I want to be a manager here. People can easily say that in a catch up or easily say it to people, but what are you putting into that process yourself? What are you actually offering up? And that does start a big part of people being genuine, and then you actually believing that that's what they want, and then you giving them access to those opportunities. But that person would never have been aware. You may never have been aware that they were interested in working in your department.
Exactly.
And when it comes to who do we put in that project, you might have just picked someone completely random and said, well, this, they've person's done it before or whatnot.
We actually were going out to a consulting firm to get a resource in, which was going to be more expensive, and then and the learning curve for that person was going to be very steep, coming in to learn the company culture, what we do, learning people, who are the people. Whereas this way, she already knew people, she knew the way the plant worked, and there was very little from an onboarding perspective that we needed to do. And we saved money. So that was really good. So that was really good. One thing I want to touch on before we move into the Q&A is really around online presence. And I think like building up the profile, does it need to be perfect before you reach out to people in your network?
No, I don't think so. I think like if you're building an online presence, and I have to say, this is probably not going to be very popular, but I'm sure people have seen that with COVID-19. I think everyone's building their personal brand at the moment, and it's killing me. I don't even want to go on my LinkedIn feed at the moment. Like, I don't know if you've seen people posting videos of them making spaghetti and how they spend their time in COVID-19, and
Yeah.
it's driving me
Yeah.
nuts. And I think there's a lot of, what I
Yeah.
mean by that is there is a very good way to build up your network, and it's by offering content and offering things that people get value out of. So
Amazing.
whether,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's not just the fact that it is content. I think people put content out all the time because they think, I've got to put out content. And if that's where it comes from,
Yeah.
it's not going to be very good for your career, in my
So
opinion.
good. Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with, why are you generating this content? What are you hoping
Yes.
to give to somebody?
Yeah.
Why should somebody in their network be very interested in your online presence? And yes, online presence is massive when it comes to understanding your next career move. Having a good LinkedIn profile, having your projects up and uploaded so that when you put that you're open to opportunities, you're more approachable. Or plus, people see that you've put the time in to do that. So you obviously care about your own career.
Yes.
If you don't do it, I find that people, many times you're kind of like, oh, I just hope someone will find me. It's that same thing. It does take time. It does mean putting time into your LinkedIn profile. It does mean spending some time in your, and let's be honest, you can get on your phone now and be on LinkedIn. So if you're commuting back and forth, you could do it. But your online presence doesn't just have to be through that platform. So I think people always get hooked up to the latest platform, but what groups can you join? What email chains could you be a part of? What kind of learning and development groups can you participate in? What people could you mentor? All of that also builds up an online presence. So one is, if you waited till your profile was perfect and you didn't reach out till it was, you'd never reach out to anybody, you know?
Yeah.
And also you won't know what a perfect profile looks like until you interact with your network. You know, I say to consultants I hire now, or I've worked with, like, if you just waited until you knew everything, then you wouldn't learn anything. Like, there's no way you could participate. So you have to be pretty active in your networks. So yeah, that's the longer answer to your short, but I think everyone now today can build an online presence. And I don't think it actually takes that much time. And it is all a part of your profile and your career. And if you, even in a way, like, this is kind of a cool story anyway, but I worked with a candidate who had a real big passion for beer brewing. And I used to work for AB InBev, and he was an engineer, but he worked in a very different kind of engineering sector. But he built up a lot of, like, did home brewing, did all these sort of side projects and side trainings and side things. And he was very public about it on his LinkedIn, on his profile, about his passion, and you know, still had a very good CV and background for what he was doing. And that led to him getting a job at AB InBev, you know, one of the biggest beer companies in the world, because they went on there. If they'd looked at his CV straight on, they would have gone, you're not right for this. But because someone did get a chance to look at their profile and go, all right, well, actually, this engineering skill with a lot of the stuff that they're doing in their own time, so you can use it to even push your career in the way that you want it to go to.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And I think, like you said, it's never going to be perfect. You know, put for me, what I've been advising people is, you know, make sure your strengths are clear there. What are you good at? And it's not just about the CV and the experience only, but it's also about, you know, how do you work in teams? People love to read stories. You know, tell them a little bit about yourself, give some insight in terms of who you are, because the CV is, you know, quite general, but you have, I think it's 2,600 characters in the about section of your LinkedIn profile to be able to share and convey a message of who you are, that you're not able to share on a CV, which is sometimes can be quite a clinical document, and it doesn't really give the flavor.
The amount of people that leave those sections blank on their LinkedIn is incredible. And how long does it take? How long does it take for you to put something in there?
Yeah. And I think, you know, it brings us to what do you put in there? And that's something that you need to go back to that beginning that we spoke about. Who am I? What's my personal brand? What am I wanting to convey? What is that message? What's my voice? So I think from that perspective, it's really about how do you show up? How do you show up to your potential colleagues, your potential employers? How are you showing up? Exactly like the content. Be purposeful in content. Don't put content just for the sake of content. Put it out, be purposeful. What is that voice that you're wanting to, what is that topic you want to shed light on? What's your voice saying?
And it all comes back, I mean, if we put it in summary, the idea is that you need to be able to recognize where you want to go. And if you don't know where you want to go, you need to explore. And that means talking, building relationships, and going out of your way to be proactive in your own career. Be proactive with your own training. And all that stuff starts to build up what we kind of call your career capital. And then once you've been able to assign what your goal is, how do you communicate that effectively? Can you communicate it internally? Can you communicate it to external recruiters externally? And then can you leverage both of those relationships to make sure that you keep going in the way that you want your career to go? And then how can you evaluate the opportunities that you might take next? And I think everything else we've talked about, the LinkedIn profile, all that stuff adds to what your vision needs to be. And that's why I think it's so funny. We keep touching on the early part, the reflection and goals piece, but if that doesn't exist, you're not making purposeful moves. And whether you want to build a 5-year plan or a 2-year plan or a 1-year plan or whatever it is, just have something in place.
Exactly. So good. Well, we have some questions. We have one on the LinkedIn profile from Deshni. Do you think it's a good idea? Do we need to have a professional profile picture? Is that important? Or do you put a picture that reflects who you are?
So I've got a kind of 2 stories to this, because I always believe that on a LinkedIn profile or on a professional profile, you should have a professional photo, right? So no, like there are, on the other end though, I've had some pretty funny, interesting ones where it's been something that's really involved with their career, right? Okay. So I think once there's like a manufacturing manager for dairy, and he had a picture with a cow, right? Like he was, and it was a bit of a laugh. I don't think it completely disqualifies you. And I do think you need to bring some of your personality across. You know, just having a business photo can sometimes be, okay, you know, it's fine, but obviously don't go too casual. We've all seen the horrible LinkedIn photos where you're like, that should be on Facebook and nowhere else, and I never want to see it again. But so this is kind of new. So I obviously message clients from my WhatsApp, and I used to have a very professional like suit photo for my WhatsApp photo. And I changed mine to having a monkey on my shoulder when I was in Thailand. And the amount of response and engagement, because people could see me as a human being, was very different. Yeah, really interesting. Now, obviously, I think I'm coming from a different spot. I am a recruiter reaching out to professionals, and you know, maybe you don't want to have a photo like that up if I was going to be messaging who could be my next boss, right? If somebody giving me their phone number. But I do think there is a lot of trying to see how can you bring your personality across. How can you be a little bit different and a little creative? But yeah, look, again, with any of these things, you think of your audience. If your audience is going to be, 100%. You know, managers and HR people and those sort of things, it needs to be professional, because it's like a job seeker piece. Same, you know, define who your audience is. Put yourself in their shoes is the easiest answer to those. Some industries are more casual than others. But, you know, I still think you need to just know your audience, and you'll know that. You know, there are people that work in research and development that I work with now in life sciences. They never wear a suit. But if you're going to go to an interview there, or you're going to show that you're interested in their company, people want to see you made an effort. So it's like that. I don't want to say mine's catch 22 or whatever, but you want to bring something across, but you need to be aware that it's not just a social profile.
And I think interesting on even what you wear. I did a course recently on how you dress up, how you show up, your personal brand. So for instance, if you are a creative person, you know, you are able to, you know, still dress up professionally, but maybe a pop of color in in the jacket that you use. So that comes across, hey, I'm bold, I'm creative. But you know, not going, you know, completely onto the other side where it's not coming across professional. So I think it's about you can still bring your personal flavor, but still keep it professional. Yeah. So we have a question from Kaliswa. Do recruiters find you or do you find them?
So I think it needs to be both ways. So I think where people are very poor in their career is, why wouldn't you want to go out and find people and message and connect with individuals that are experts field? More so, I think people don't treat, look, I get it. There's a lot of recruiters that are annoying, and and you have so many people get into it for only a few years. And that's really because you have to kind of understand the industry a little bit. A lot of companies hire a lot of people, and it's a sink or swim mentality in their companies. And what happens is, I actually think a good recruiter does take a level of higher level emotional intelligence. But instead of assessing that or trying to go through the process of assessing it, it's okay, who's going to survive? And so I would say it's very important to reach out to people that you see have specialized in your market and have been in it for 5 years and have been at the same company. Because you'll see that if you leave, or if they're jumping to a lot of different companies, they haven't been able to really build a network, and their network changes with every move that you make, because you can't bring your old companies with you. You can't bring your old relationships with you. So I look, when I look at a rec to rec, I look at someone that's been in the field a while. The person who placed me in my job at Proco Global, he's still the person I interact with. I still let him, and I spend time. If the call comes through, I'll chat to him for 15, 20 minutes, have a little casual phone call, even if I'm not active. And that's because the investment is minimal to me, but the return could be massive. And that's the difference. And that's the proactivity piece. And actually, if I see someone who comes up on my LinkedIn, or I get referred to speak to someone, I go out of my way and have that chat. And it's the same strategy that very senior level C-suite people do, because at the end of the day, they're always building relationships, always seeing what's available. So if you're putting your open opportunities on LinkedIn, which I do suggest, it's a great idea, even if you're just wanting to feel what's out there, take the calls, but don't be afraid to not spend time with people that you think are wasting your time, or have a look at their profile before you jump on the call and see if it's someone that you think is really going to come through. I think it's sifting through and finding the right partners. Agreed.
Great. So we have just almost 5 minutes left. So just to summarize and also just to get us to a call to action. So, you've listened for 55 minutes. Thank you guys for staying on. And really, it's now, what is that next step that you are going to take? From everything we've spoken about today, understanding who you are, building relationships, how do you invest in yourself, from setting a career plan, what is one action that you are going to take out of today? And if you are struggling to figure that out, please connect with myself or Nathaniel. We have a program that can support. We're doing these group coaching pods at the moment, where you learn together, so you'll have a chance to interact with other people. We're trying to keep it as intimate as possible. So, for you guys that have showed up, we have a gift for you, quite reduced rates at the moment, and we'll send that through on email so that you're able to read through that in your own time. But even if you're not sure about it, I offer discovery calls at no charge. Please connect with me, and we can take it from there. And just because for me, I want to be able to give support and put it into as many hands as possible. If we need to ask for help. I think that's the main message, is ask for help. How do you get started, and where can you go from here? So call to action. What is one action you're going to take? And the opportunity is there for you to reach out if you need it.
And so important, I think, going through this whole session, we've obviously started to talk around some of these points, and hopefully have gotten you guys to just reflect and think about how you can actually approach your own career. But where I think a lot of things like Terentia services, or even just having an outside, you're a mentor, is that they can just help you push you in the right direction. Sometimes it's still a lot that we've gone through today. So you might sometimes go, all right, but what what does my next step look like? And you want a bit more direction. That's where a lot of these things can be very beneficial, is to having that external support, which is unbiased, and able to give you some real advice.
Yeah, that's so good. If there's a lot of people thanking us, thank you so much, guys. We really were excited to share this. I hope you've taken something away today. We're going to try and do this more often, to talk about different topics. So, you know, drop us a note even to say you would really love to hear about this topic, and we'll try and prepare around that as well. We really want to engage with you and talk about what's relevant, what are burning issues currently at the moment. If there's, I think we've answered all the questions that we've had, but if there's any more, please feel free to drop us a note afterwards. We really appreciate the time you've taken today to come and spend on yourself, really investing in yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. It's to, it's not selfishness. It's actually investing in yourself so that you can show up at your best for the people that are around you, the people that you love, the people that are in your charge, the people that you lead. So it's really taking our time for you to be at your best. Yeah. Any closing?
You've already taken the first step.
Yeah,
you've taken
exactly.
the first step. This is just the type of proactivity you need with your own career.
Yes.
And so I think it's incredible that you've all come to join us. So thanks so much, and best of luck. And obviously, if you need anything, don't hesitate to drop us a note.
Exactly. Well, thank you, everyone. We hope to see you in the next webinar. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.